Day three and the final day where the leaders of governments from around the world came together to state their national commitments. And this is where I think the opening remarks by none other than the Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala shared the sentiment of, I think, the spirit of all the different national leaders, where she called them all to task and said, how long will you make us wait for your promises? And so the conversation was more about actions and initiatives versus just hypothetical scenarios of which we hope to transform. So I think instead of summarizing each of the different countries and what they were sharing, I really think that the Secretary-General's opening remarks, where he shared his vision statement, which is made available, I'll share a link below. I think it encapsulates a lot of what countries around the world are putting into practice and actioning, and which we're going to start seeing unfold in the coming years, some of which we've already starting to see unfold. And that relates to, first of all, this spirit that education is no longer fit for purpose. It needs to change. There was specific conversations related to, the fact that employers are calling and complaining about the mismatch of skills and how learning continues to underplay skills. We need to do some major work to change that. As well, there was conversations around educators and teachers, and often how they're poorly trained, undervalued, and that we need to do more to provide supports. But also that they're often held back. They're held back by outdated roles, methods, as well as held back by the tools that we're putting in their hands to do the work that they need to do. Now, what I loved is that there were specific specific understandings around, okay, so if we're going to transform education, what do we need to do to support learning and support learners, and in what specific areas? And so they identified four. And so one is we have to help learners learn how to learn, right? Develop the knowledge and skills. We have to help learners learn how to live together with others, breaking down barriers, but also live in their environments and the communities that they're going to be serving. We also need to help them learn how to do. And what do we mean by that? That means, kids are going to be skilled, they're going to be upskilled and reskilled. And there's new skills that kids are going to need to develop, like digital literacy skills and financial skills. And with all these new STEM fields provided, coming out, this is constant ever changing and upcycling. And so it's not just enough to know what to do, but to know how to put into practice what we learn. And so this whole concept about learning how to do was discussed. As well, probably very important, is helping learners learn how to be. And what they meant by that is, to help them live meaningful lives, to help them express their creativity, express themselves through the arts, and of course, to help them live a healthy and happy lives. And so these are the four different ways in which transformative education needs to support learners. But how are we actually going to get there? And so the following things were identified, four key things were identified to transform education. And the first had to do with the environments, the learning environments, and how we need to ensure, first and foremost, that they are inclusive of all learners. And that also the attention that we need to spend on teachers, right? And it's, no doubt that we need to help the education community. We need to support them. They need to transform from being passive to more active, to be more collaborative with each other. And this is done by a variety of different ways, by empowering them, right? By making sure we're providing supports, right? And of course, by also making sure that we're addressing things like the teacher shortage, or we're developing their capacity by relooking how we do teacher, initial teacher training and in-service training. So all these related to development of the most important factor, which is our educators that are with our students day in and day out. As well, there was talk about harnessing digital. And when they talked about digital, they talked about three particular key areas. And that's all these key areas. What I loved the conversation it went to is, yes, we know about access. Yes, we know about making sure it's broadly accessible and that needs to be put in place. But it's access alone is not enough. We have to ensure quality. And when they talked about quality, they talked about quality in terms of connectivity, talked about quality in terms of use, what are the actual behaviors, the practices of our teachers and of our learners with these digital tools. And of course, the last one had to do with the quality of the content and the platforms through which they had access to. There's more in depth in the report. I encourage you to kind of read through that as well. And of course, we have to talk about the funding, because none of this happens without ensuring that there's adequate funding. And if you heard my previous video, there is that new fund that's going to be available to make sure that we don't just talk about these, but we put these into practice. So there you have it, small little snippets of the UN General Assembly. That concludes day 3. If you haven't checked out day 1 and day 2, or just the general synthesis, you can check out the rest of my videos below. Enjoy.